In a world where smartphones have crossed the $1,000 threshold, OnePlus is a company known for its affordable flagships. Even though it's only been a few months since the release of the OnePlus 5, the company is already releasing its newest flagship. But has OnePlus kept up with the times, or has it fallen behind industry giants? And now that the 5 has been all but discontinued, is it worth switching to the 5T? I'm Angie for GSM Arena, and this is the OnePlus 5T review. So first, there's no getting around it. Let's start with the screen. The 6-inch AMOLED display is the biggest change in this phone. It features an 18:9 aspect ratio with much smaller bezels on the top and bottom. Weirdly enough, the side bezels are a little bit thicker, but you're not really going to notice it in real-life use. The phone is still just as easy to hold and use with one hand, although typing like this is not something I would recommend. Here, you have a lot more screen real estate than on the OnePlus 5, and going back to the old one actually feels a little bit restrictive, which is weird considering the old one was my daily driver for the past couple of months. Also, the screen looks great. The 5T has a 1080p screen, but it has plenty of detail and bright, punchy colors. Blue tones are noticeably better than on the 5. Now, because of the drama with the Pixel, a lot of you are pretty wary of AMOLED displays and color shifting. The OnePlus 5T isn't perfect, and it does have some slight color shifting, but it's pretty mild unless you have it at a really extreme angle. Ours tends to go towards purple, but that might vary depending on your unit. The display is bright, and sunlight legibility is definitely not a problem. For most videos, you'll get black bars on the edges, but we did manage to find a few videos on YouTube which do fit full screen automatically, all thanks to some recent updates. The speaker experience is much improved, but that is not saying a lot considering the old one wasn't amazing and it was actually pretty tinny. Though it's not as loud as the 5, and though stereo speakers are conspicuously absent, there's some bass now and clear, pleasant highs. Now, there is also a headphone jack. And the sound is pretty good, but if you're an audiophile and you want hi-fi DAC audio, it's not on here. Now, they say that it's what's on the inside that counts, but that's not always the case with phones. While this new phone isn't ugly by any means, it's clearly a mix of trends from the past couple of months. The front is clearly inspired by bezel-less trends, while the back looks like the LG V30 and the iPhone 7 Plus had a baby. It's very slim and comfortable to hold, and there aren't any sharp edges digging into your skin. On the left side are the volume buttons and the alert slider, and on the right lay the power button and the SIM slot. There is no expandable storage, which is not a problem on the 128GB version, but the 64GB one can feel a little bit tight if you're crazy about taking photos and videos. The edges of the phone have a tiny curve to them, if you look really closely, but otherwise the phone is pretty flat, and that's a pro or a con depending on your taste. I am disappointed to say this phone still has no IP68 protection, so you're still gonna have to be pretty careful with it. The fingerprint reader is now in the back, and it's as fast as ever. It's also always on, so there's a solid chance you'll never see your lock screen, no matter how nice your wallpaper is. There's also facial recognition, which is a stock Android feature made better by OnePlus. It's not as secure as Apple's, but it's much faster since you don't need to swipe up. It also may be a little bit more secure than most Android phones, since the 5T requires that you have at least one eye open for it to work. As you might have guessed by the aluminum, there's no wireless charging here. That's hardly a deal breaker though, since the company's dash charging means you can get about 65% battery in half an hour, and a full charge in around 55 minutes. Dash charging is my favorite OnePlus feature, and going back to regular chargers is just painful. The 5T has the same battery life as the OnePlus 5. This is thanks to the power-efficient Snapdragon 835 chipset. Our unit has 8 gigs of RAM, although there's also one with 6. There's no slowdown when opening and closing apps, even when you have about 1,000 open. It also breezes through heavy games, but it can start feeling a little bit toasty if you play for a longer period of time. The phone has Android Nougat, but OnePlus has promised to roll out updates with Android Oreo in early 2018. It has Oxygen OS, and the experience is almost out of stock Android. So my one huge gripe is the folder visualization system. So when you tap on something, it takes you to full screen instead of just a floating bar, which if you've got everything organized like me in tiny little folders on the home screen, this makes things take way longer than they would otherwise. Other than that, there's a host of familiar and useful additions on top of the usual Android set, like expanded snapshot, auto night mode, reading mode, which are all pretty self-explanatory, and App Locker, which requires a fingerprint or a password to open certain apps. There's also the OnePlus shelf when you swipe from left to right on the home screen. You can double tap on the screen to reveal your lock screen, and you can also double click the power button to go to the camera app. Speaking of which, it has a dual camera setup, one 16 megapixels and one 20 megapixel camera. The primary camera has a 1.7 aperture and seems about as good as before. Foliage can be a little smudgy and details are just decent, but colors really pop and there isn't much noise. The second camera's primary purpose is for better nighttime shots and better blur effects. In fact, when you do take night shots, it'll occasionally switch to the second camera. But why and when it decides to do so, we haven't exactly figured that out. Nighttime photos are better if you look closely, but there's no extreme improvement, and in fact, there's a lot of other flagships that are better in this department. Bokeh, on the other hand, has improved substantially. The edge detection is now quite good, especially when you consider that portrait mode on the previous model had some pretty huge blunders. Still, this is not the best use for a secondary camera, and we actually miss the 2x lossless zoom of the previous version. 4K videos have good colors and good details, and the EIS works great to stabilize things. 1080p video isn't the best, especially when shooting at 30 frames per second. It looks overprocessed and not as sharp as we'd like. 1080p at 60 frames per second is better, but still not as good as 4K. The front camera seems identical to the previous one, and while not the best around, it still has plenty of detail and it doesn't overexpose too much. All in all, if you already own a OnePlus 5, there really is no reason for you to upgrade unless you're super desperate for a bigger screen. However, if you're looking to upgrade a phone that's from 2016 or earlier, things are way different. First, you're looking at a great phone for the money. Yeah, okay, you're gonna be missing a few features like IP68 protection and wireless charging, but if you can live without those, then it's a really good phone. It performs pretty well in pretty much every other area, and it's a super fast phone with a great multimedia experience. So if you're looking for a new phone, you should really check it out. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe down below, and check out the description if you want our full test findings. I'll see you next time.